Today we're going to be watching scary stories. Okay, here we start.
In all my years of being a police officer in Floyd County, Georgia, I had only experienced two horrifying situations. I'll share with you the worst of the two. It was a slow night, and I was patrolling the dirt roads in my cruiser. At this particular spot,
if you hear stuff in my background, it's my dog and my family.
There were tiny woods on both sides of the road. And then it all started. I spotted somebody jumping into the woods on the left. I only saw half of them though. They were gone so quickly. I pulled up closer and shined the spotlight into the woods. I didn't see them. Unfortunately, it was kind of my job to check on things like this, so I hesitantly stepped out from the car and began searching.
I would not get out of my car if I saw something. I would make my partner do it.
In a moment like this, I was so ready to pull my gun, as I was actually terrified. And then, the cliched snap of a branch from behind a tree almost made me want to run back to the car, but I instead did my job and called for them to come out. Someone wearing a mask stepped out from the tree. I told them to raise their arms, take off their mask, and come to me slowly. They raised their hands, but they didn't remove the mask. I tried to demonstrate my authority by yelling this time, ordering them to take it off. They looked as if they were about to take it off, when suddenly, he or she looked to their left, and then back at me. I heard footsteps coming from my right. I drew my gun. I yelled as loud as I could for everybody to come out with their hands up. You may be thinking, why? Well, if you were in this position, in this setting, you would have been shitting yourself just like I was. Another person wearing a mask walked over, this one holding an axe. I had my gun locked on him. But suddenly, footsteps started coming from all directions. I looked around, and I was surrounded. There were at least 10 strangers wearing masks, surrounding me almost in a circle, with only an opening behind me. Half of them were armed with axes and the like. I stood there, gun raised, but not even aimed at anything at this point. I felt like I was going to throw up. One of them, I'm not sure which, finally broke the silence, telling me in a muffled, deep voice, "Go away." My heart dropped as he said this, in a way that I knew I was going to live. I turned and ran for the car, driving down the road half a mile, all while calling for backup. As you would guess, the whole group was gone from the woods when a search squad arrived. I have a theory on this, however. I believe that what I witnessed was some kind of fucked up secret society that was planning on trapping an innocent passerby, and I think that whoever jumped into the woods as I was passing recognized my car as a police car and tried to hide. Had I not been a police officer, I believe they would have stopped me, led me to the woods, and done whatever this group does for its sick kicks. At the time of this story, I had already met a total of 3 people on Match.com. It didn't really work out with 2 of them, and the third one I dated for 4 months. After my breakup, I wanted to take a break from commitment and just find something more casual. And so I matched with a girl named Kylie.
Musician is the best way to learn, practice, and master a musical instrument. Just play along with any guitar.
Kylie, who I got along with decently well on the app. She seemed down to just come over to my apartment and hang out for the night. She showed up about half an hour later and seemed really quiet in person. We hung out in my room in the upstairs of my apartment for most of the night. We just talked for a while watching TV in the background. There were a bunch of awkward silences, but I did my best to fill them with new conversations. In the back of my mind the whole time I was thinking, are we gonna kiss? Does she expect me to move in for the kiss? How do I go about it? But hours of talking later, I started to realize there was something wrong with this girl. She became increasingly more emotionless. She was staring off across the room as she'd talk slowly, talking about increasingly deep and dark things. Then she said something surprising. She thanked me for allowing her to sleep over. Apparently, when I said she could come hang out for the night, she meant to literally stay the night. She got off the bed and asked what blankets she could use for the floor. I grabbed a couple blankets and pillows and made a sort of bed for her on the floor. She thanked me and then laid down on her side facing away from me. I guessed she was ready to go to sleep. I turned off the TV and closed my eyes. We didn't say a single word to each other, and I have to admit it was very awkward. I fell asleep probably half an hour after shutting the TV, but I awoke randomly in the middle of the night. I sat up and looked down at the floor and was able to see that Kylie didn't appear to be laying on the floor anymore.
Oh no.
I flipped on the lamp and looked around the room. She wasn't anywhere, actually. But just then, I heard a voice downstairs. It sounded like it could be Kylie. All the walls in my apartment are paper thin, so noise travels quite easily throughout it. I quietly left my room and stood at the foot of the top of the stairs.
Okay, now. This is getting too creepy. Hold on. Let me... Put that over there. Okay. Trying to get comfortable.
Listening for what Kylie could be saying. All the lights upstairs were off, but she was talking in a low voice. I just couldn't tell for sure what exactly she was saying. I figured she was on the phone with someone, but still, I went downstairs to check. I stepped into the dark kitchen, and there she was. But she wasn't on the phone. She was just creepily sitting in one of the chairs facing the wall. She seemed to still be muttering to herself. I was frozen. All I could say was, "Kylie?" She turned her head to me slowly, looked at me for a few seconds, then turned back to face the wall. I went upstairs quickly to my room and crawled into my bed to call my dad. I had to call at least 3 times before he finally picked up, obviously sounding concerned. I told him in a quiet panic that some random girl from online was staying the night, and now she was sitting in my kitchen muttering to herself like a crazy person. He sounded confused as hell, but told me to call 911 if she seemed like she was having some kind of episode to safely get her out of there. Then I looked up and noticed a figure standing by my bedroom door in the dark. It was Kylie.
I was slapping her so hard.
All I saw was the outline of her skinny body. She stood there for maybe 10 seconds. All I heard was my dad on the other end of the phone saying hello over and over. The next thing I saw was the silhouette of Kylie at my door suddenly charge at me in my bed as she began to scream. She lunged at me and put her hands around my throat, trying to choke me. However, I was able to quickly overpower her and hold her down against the bed. I screamed at my dad to call the cops. I was able to drag the insane girl downstairs by the time the cops came. The cops took her away to fill out a few documents. I think it's safe to say that you should always meet people from websites and apps in a safe, public place first.
Okay, we're gonna watch one more, then I'm gonna stop the video.
I went to the bathroom in the middle of the night after some nightmares and left my door cracked open before I got back into bed. When I fell asleep, I dreamt that I was outside my room. In the dream, I saw my door cracked open. I pushed it open and then saw myself sleeping.
I always have some sort of...
When I woke up, my door was wide open.
When I was a teenager, I was home alone one weekend and I was sleeping in my parents' room since there was a TV in there. Sometime around 2 a.m., I felt like I was being stared at from the direction of the hallway. I looked up and I saw a shadow person looking at me. It was weird because it was a pure man-shaped black mass and I could see him in the dark hallway. I'm guessing the light from the TV helped. I sat up and stared back, but I was terrified. We looked at each other for probably 5 seconds and then I turned around and walked down the hall. A few seconds later, I heard a loud crash. I was so scared I turned the TV to the Disney Channel and stayed awake for as long as possible. When I woke up the next morning, I walked down the hall to the bathroom, and that's when I noticed a mirror that was hanging had fallen off the wall and was shattered. My family still doesn't believe me, but I know what happened.
Okay, that's the end. Leave a like and subscribe, and goodbye.